What was your FCK it, done helping others moment? Was donating baby toddler clothes to a mom in need through one of those Facebook donating pages. She didn't have a car. I did, so I drove 30 minutes away to deliver the stuff all for free. Got in a bad accident less than 5 blocks from her house. So I texted her to see if she could come get what she was able to because my car was totaled. She wouldn't walk the 4 blocks, then reported me to the group and got me kicked out for not following through. I ended up with a fractured sternum. Yeah, fuck that never again. I had a pickup truck, and anyone with a truck knows that means all of a sudden everyone and their cousin that is moving wants help. I'm fine with that. I had ground rules, and I didn't stray from them. You pack the I just put it in the truck and move it to the new place. You tell me where the box goes, and once it's down that's the end. Got a lot of pizza and beer, and cash back in the day. But no, that's not the direction of this story. I had an old acquaintance from school. We weren't close, in fact he was a bit of a bully, but he seemed chill enough almost 15 years later. He asked me if I still had a truck, and if I could tow his car someplace. I said sure, throw me a couple bucks and rent a trailer and I'm your guy. Have the rental arranged, and I'll show up with a hitch and we're off to the races. I told him here that I work midnights, and I'm gonna be tired, so the faster it's over the better for me. Well, I showed up, and he didn't have the trailer. Okay, fine. We go get a trailer, and head over to his place. We get the car in, it's all dandy. I ask where we're going. We're going 2 hours away. Okay, that sucks. Just gonna race the car at the drag strip 2 hours away, do a couple runs and we'll head back. My phone died, and my truck didn't have a clock. Fuck. He's off racing his box, and I can't find him anywhere. I finally managed to find him, had to be 4 hours later, and tell him it's time to go. He says sure, just one more rip up the track. Fine. He disappears again, can't find him. I've got the truck running at this point, ready to tell him getting the trailer and the car back is his problem unless we leave right now. I'm exhausted. I barely slept, and I'm cranky. I see him flashing a big huge wad of cash. I think, well, at least I'm gonna get paid a decent chunk for my efforts. We get the car loaded up, and head back the 2 hours to our city. Drop the car off, drop the trailer off, and drop him off. He says thanks, and gives me 10 bucks. I'm astounded. I tell him, dude, this doesn't even cover gas. It was supposed to be a half hour, and it was pretty much all day. He goes, well, it's all I've got on me, sorry man. And that was the last time I ever hauled a car. Fuck that guy. God, just typing this out made me peed off. I'm a teacher. A parent of a former student contacted me in an emergency situation, couldn't afford to pay bills, and needed help. She was super helpful to me in my first year teaching, so I asked friends and family to help out and raised her about $2,000. Never again. She has contacted me every few weeks since then, always with a new reason why she needs more money, and when I offer food and clothing resources, she refuses it. It has placed me in such an awkward situation and I regret ever trying to help her out in the first place. Met a guy who had hit a rough patch. We had great chemistry and he made me laugh. The bar was so low. He gave me a sob story of why he was getting kicked out of his communal house, and I offered to let him stay with me because I live alone and have my own place. Huge mistake. He hadn't hit a rough patch, he was the rough patch. Barely paid for anything and would get wasted while I was at work and be a total a-hole when I got home. Got fired from his job, ate all the food I'd buy and make excuses as to why he hadn't found another job yet. The absolute kicker was when I went home for my nana's funeral, he treated it like a mini vacation in my place. Invited friends over, played music so loud the cops got called, and when he was supposed to pick me up from the airport, he was wasted at someone's house at 8 AM. Never felt better than the day I kicked him out. No more financial and emotional abuse. Finally felt like my place was mine again. I've learned an expensive lesson. Don't help people that won't help themselves. When nothing is their fault, there's a serious issue. Run fast and far. I have neighbors across the road who we extended ourselves to help out because they had young kids and seemed to be struggling. Well, they were really starting to take advantage to the point where we couldn't walk out of our house without them literally yelling for us because they needed a phone, a ladder, money, someone to drive them somewhere, diapers, our Wi-Fi password, our wood, etc. etc. This started happening every day and multiple times a day. It became ridiculous and oppressive. They have since pulled Dutch with everyone else on our road, wearing out one generous person after the other. Once you realize people are merely moochers and are content to remain so, that's when you're done. Try having those people as family. My wife's oldest sister has 2 young daughters. Her and her husband are constantly getting brand new cars, the best liquor they can find, other expensive toys and such. I personally can't stand them much. Then my sister-in-law, who was on dialysis, found out she had a kidney donor. Big surgery several hours away. It was a whole thing. To help, my wife offered to get them groceries, so they gave her a list. Of course it was filled with a bunch of worthless While we could technically afford it, we weren't exactly flush with cash. We had to move things around. This went on for a month, my wife making weekly trips. I was adamantly against it, which my wife said was unfair, as they needed the help. Upon the last trip she made, I got a call from my wife apologizing to me for not listening. Brother-in-law couldn't wait to show her the brand new movie theater room he put in. She was beyond peered. All I could say was, I warned you. Had a friend years ago who was a bit self-centered and prone to stretching the truth, but he was a nice enough guy with a rough backstory and my friend group liked him, so I cut him a lot of slack. I like to host and I have friends staying over pretty regularly. Back then, I usually had 1 or 2 people spending the night on any given day. Anyhow, over the span of a couple of years this guy starts abusing that, staying over for days or even weeks at a time, eating my food and drinking my liquor without contributing, that sort of thing. While constantly talking about his grand plans and daydreams as if they'd already happened. A little sad, but also pretty annoying after a while. Anyhow, I sit him down one day and let him know he's got to head home, and that he's free to come over and hang out, but I'm not comfortable with him staying over for the time being. He leaves, I think it went remarkably well, and head out to work. And it turns out that he broke in while I was away at work and stole a bunch of my sister's things because his birthday was coming up and neither of us even thought to get him a gift. It takes a special person to rationalize how burglarizing someone is really their fault. Anyway, all slack and sympathy went out the window immediately. Called the cops and he's dead to me. My mother and her new husband had moved into a new place and invited all the kids over for Christmas. In previous years we would buy a whole turkey dinner from somewhere so no one me had to cook. So imagine my surprise when my husband and I walk in, my mother walks out of the kitchen, hands me a spoon and says, "Good, you're finally here," and goes to sit down in the living room. After a quick and awkward conversation, it was determined that my job was to make sure everything currently in progress or not even started got to the table on time, while everyone else socialized. Basically, I was the help and should have realized that, so any feelings I had about that were my fault. I was a good cook, and my mother taught me everything, not so I owed her. So I did, and not knowing the family dynamics, my new step siblings were very thankful and appreciative of all my efforts, which caused a meltdown from my mother about how we all should be thanking her. That was the first time I used a phrase that has come in handy for these situations. I'm so sorry, it will never happen again. And it never did. They weren't happy when they finally realized what that meant. This is selfish, but I wanna know what the fallout was like. When I rushed to another state about 2,000 miles away to help my sister because of a medical issue, and for whatever reason she decided to have her neighbor help her instead, without letting me know. It was 3 months ago and she is fine but still has not contacted me. That was the end for me. I feel your pain. My sister is a year younger and I one time did a week's worth of DIY saving her thousands. I did all the work on an evening, after work until 12 AM most nights. She never offered me food or tea despite telling me she would. On the last day, right before a deadline I had, she needed me to fit a shelf and I didn't have the tools or time. I said I'd come back next week. She erupted. I left and she told everyone I did nothing for her, that I'm selfish. I literally have never helped her since. Edit. What really got me was that after ringing the whole family to tell them how selfish I was, she posted pictures of the work on her social media claiming what an amazing job she had done. Zero thanks or mention of me. Diabolical. Even thinking of it now makes me salty. When I dropped my rate significantly to help a struggling family with childcare. Blended family needing to find childcare for their emotionally damaged children who had been hospitalized by mum's boyfriend. Both parents worked and my wages were paid through a charity scheme. It was hell. They were utterly useless as people, let alone parents. They took the pee and ended up basically doing nothing with the house or children and ended up owing me nearly 2k due to them committing benefit fraud and pocketing what they should have been passing on to me. The final straw was when they asked me to babysit that night as they needed to go out on the lash. It's been stressful whilst telling me they couldn't afford food, let alone pay me. Never again will I fall for a sob story. I used to volunteer for an organization which helped women get jobs. They'd send babysitters to women's homes so they could go to job interviews. It was totally fine if these moms did a quick essential errand, like grocery shopping, after their interview. I watched one woman's kids 5 times and assumed she just had bad luck in her interviews, but she always came back with a fresh manicure. I learned she'd been blowing off the interviews the organization had been setting up to get drinks with friends or get her nails and hair done. Not me, but my parents. My cousin moved in with us for 2 years when I was a kid. She's 18 years older than me. She ended up being a drug addict that smoked in the house, stole money, couldn't hold down a job, and mercilessly picked on my sister and I until the day she got kicked out. That was almost 30 years ago. To this day my parents refuse to let anyone move in because they just need a place to stay until they're back on their feet. I was walking to a concert in downtown Chicago in late November. This happened on North Dearborn right in the Loop. If you've never been to Chicago, it's one of the nicer parts of downtown. It was a cold night, so I was walking with both hands in my pockets and a cig in my mouth. I was approached by a younger dude, who didn't appear to be homeless immediately as he was dressed semi-decently and didn't reek or anything. He asked me if he could bum a cig. I was in a good mood going to the concert, so I said sure and gave him one, along with my lighter. He handed me my lighter back and I expected he would keep walking on, but he matched pace with me and asked how I was doing. I told him fine and asked how he was doing. He said he's just trying to make it out here. I thought, here we go. He asked me for money because he said he hadn't eaten all day. Now I had about $200 in cash on me, mostly in 20s. I had maybe a couple smaller bills, so it's not like I couldn't give him money. But I didn't want to pull out a wad of any size in front of a guy I don't know on the street, and people can judge me or whatever, but I'm not in the habit of giving money to homeless people, but I always try to treat them with respect and dignity. I politely told him, sorry man, I don't have any cash. He got kind of angry at that point, and launched into a guilt-trippy tirade for the next half block or so about how nobody has any compassion anymore and sometimes people just need a little help. I didn't say anything in response. Truth be told, I started to feel kind of bad for him. What he said is pretty true. A lot of people aren't willing to help other people, and sometimes people really just are down on their luck. I was second guessing my decision to turn him down until we reached the next intersection. I was going straight and he cut to the right. I had to stop for the crosswalk, and I watched him get not 5 steps away from me before he took the cigarette I gave him that he barely sucked on because he was too busy yelling at me out of his mouth, and threw it on the ground. He then proceeded to walk right up to another dude and start talking to him. Maybe I didn't help him much %, but if he was as down on his luck as he wanted me to believe, he would have been burning the filter on that thing before giving it up. I instantly felt vindicated. The cigarette was the foot and the door technique he used, and probably used it again 5 minutes later. Had a newish neighbor ask if he could borrow our lawnmower. Sure. Well, more or less every week he would come and get it out of our garage, use it to cut his grass, put it away without cleaning it or adding gas. In the fall we mentioned it was a good time to get deals on a new mower. He never talked to us again. My next door neighbor is the opposite, which I am grateful for. I supply the mower, she mows both of our lawns, and we split the gas when she lets me. I feel bad that she won't even let me give her gas money most of the time, especially since she is doing all of the manual labor. Edit. So, I just sent her a quick text today to ask her how much I owe her for gas. She replied that she is sticking her garbage in my garbage can. I forgot I told her she could, so I owe her nothing. You have to pay per garbage can here, nearly 4 per can, so it all evens out. I used to frequently stay late at work for clients who showed up to the veterinary clinic last minute with a non-emergency problem and no appointment. Then 3 times in a row, 3 different people were told up front about the after hours fee, agreed to pay it instead of scheduling an appointment for the next day, and all of them called back the next day fussing that they shouldn't have been charged extra for keeping us 30-60 minutes past our scheduled hours, and that we were terrible and trying to scam them by charging for our time even though we told them up front and they had another option. It was exhausting and demoralizing. We did more than we had to for them after already working a full day because a desire to help is why we're all here in the first place, and they responded by saying our time was worth nothing and we suck. The entire staff said frick that. Now, unless it's a literal life and death situation, if we can't fit someone in before closing and they didn't have an appointment, it's a firm no. I'm in this profession to help others, and I still work late for real emergencies when they happen or if an appointment runs longer than expected, but I'm done sacrificing my personal time for entitled people who don't actually need it. Edited to clarify, the people did pay, but they were calling later to complain about it and demand a refund or say they were cancelling the transaction on their card. Instead of dealing with the headache anymore, we stopped giving non-emergency walk-ins the option of being seen after hours. No animals were harmed and the staff and their families are all much happier. We have helped out my sister-in-law a few times with money bills. Never a lot, 50 here, 100 there. Usually for some bill to avoid services being cut off. I'm usually the more heartfelt one in my marriage, but I ended up being the one to put my foot down. Went over to her apartment once. She had 2 big flat screen TVs, new couch, new fridge, kids on PlayStation or whatever console she got them. It was all rent-a-center stuff, but that was the end for me. I didn't have any of those things myself, not to mention the incredibly bad financial decision those things were with the high interest rate. Part of me felt like I was taking food out of her kids' mouths, but realized that no, her poor decisions was doing that. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the support and awards. The situation, on both sides, is way more complicated than I can put into just a couple paragraphs, as you can imagine. I want to help others and still do, but it is hard to keep supporting those that refuse to make any attempts to help themselves. I mentioned below she has started to do things differently. We've since lent her money again and she has always paid us back when she said she would. She still has a long way to go and a lot of challenges ahead of her, but we love her and will support her efforts as best we can. I posted a futon on Marketplace and the first person that hit me up gave me a sob story about needing something for their kid to sleep on. I was only asking $20 for it, but they asked if they could get it for free. My wife and I agreed to give it away, so I took it to our meeting spot at Home Depot. 2 days later this guy had the futon posted in Marketplace asking $50. My wife and I Facebook stalked him and his wife, and every time they posted it, we would hijack the listing letting everyone know the story of how they got the futon. I don't give shit away anymore, no matter the story they give me. I stood by my best friend when she cried to me about her husband cheating. And he definitely was cheating. They stayed married and said they worked through it. 6 months later she was fricking my husband behind my back. After working free of charge as a freelance graphics guide to build my portfolio up, and having a client basically make the most minor of adjustments, and constant revisions, 4 posters which should have taken me a day tops really, ended up taking 3 months. And when they wanted poster X4, I wanted money, ghosted. Lesson learnt. I used to help people plan their trips to Japan. It was very hard to get started on my own, so I offered weeks of free consulting to a few people in exchange for a review at the end of their trip. I made their itineraries, wrote a tailored culture guide for each, booked their hotels, restaurants, gave them recommendations, etc. Only 1 person out of 8 actually wrote a review. Me and my GF were leaving a McDonald's and pulling up to the stoplight. There's this homeless old man that we've seen around the area ever since we moved here, and my GF decides, since we've never given anything to this guy and he's always there, we should give him one of our McDoubles. He comes up to the car, says thank you, and walks back to his corner as the light turns green and just tosses it on the road right in front of where we're driving. WTF, haha, apparently he doesn't like handouts. Or McDoubles. Edit, you all are commenting like I don't know some beggars just want money for drugs. I'm pointing out the fact this dude hardcore refused free food. In freshman year of college, my friend of about 2 years got kicked out of his parents' house. He said he needed somewhere to stay for the night till his parents cooled off. I said you can stay a week if you want, but more than that and you'll need to pay me rent. He made pretty good money, more than me even. I was kind of hoping to find someone to split the bills with anyway. A week rolls by and he hasn't even looked for another place. His parents aren't letting him come back. I ask him if he's going to stay. He says if it's alright with you. I say sure, just pay me half the cost of the app every month. He said he can't. I know damn well he can. I say well then you gotta go. He asked if he could stay another week. I said no. He got peered at me for that. I then got peered at him for getting peered at me. I gave you a place to stay and you are mad at me? Totally ended the friendship. Never let anyone into your place unless you have a signed contract. I was working at a fast food place when I was a student. I usually did overtime to help everyone clean up and close the restaurant until about 1 AM because we were so understaffed. I guess people got used to me staying late because one night when I was supposed to finish at 11, I overheard some of my colleagues, the stereotypical mean girls, say how bad the clients had cluttered everything tonight and how it was going to be a mess to clean up. Then they say, but hey, me is gonna stay late tonight again. Let's leave it to her. She always does the cleaning anyways, followed by laughing and some bing about me. That night I clocked out at 11 after doing all of my tasks at the counter and left. The girls stared at me in shock, and when I was outside I saw one of them standing in the middle of the restaurant with her hand on her forehead, looking at the mess she would have to clean before going home. Weirdly, after that day, they started cleaning earlier without waiting for me to do everything. One day I found a puppy, dirty, hungry, and just scared and lost. I gave him a good meal and some love and went to drop him off at the address on his collar. The dude thanked me, then proceeded to beat the crap out of the dog, telling me to mind my own business when I tried to get him to stop, carried him by his collar to a 5-foot short chain in a muddy patch with a crappy broken 3-wall doghouse where I'm guessing the dog spent 100% of its time. I called the cops, but they did nothing. The dog technically had shelter, which qualifies BC 3 walls and a roof, even if it was filled with holes and it gets 20 degrees at night here. P.S. I stole the dog 3 weeks later. Hey, stealing is row nap, just kidding. Good dog napper. When I had a truck during college, everyone suddenly wanted me to help move them. Most were cool and gave me money or ordered pizza unprompted BTW. One time however some dude I barely knew needed some help. I show up, and nothing is packed in his apartment. He had a giant fish tank and lived on the 3rd floor with no elevator. It was a freaking nightmare and I never got a dime nor food or even some beers. I never talked to him after that. Shoulder left right then when you saw it like that. The day I realized that no one wanted to help me in return. Look, it's not about doing something for someone to get something back, and I will always help whoever I can that needs it. But when the same people consistently ask for help or money or what have you, without actually wanting to help you when you need it, or just hang out or be friendly in general, it's a huge red flag. When a good friend of mine that I worked under had cancer and wasn't able to pay some bills, I loaned her $200 just to help. I was only 18 at the time and felt bad because she had kids. It was right around the holidays and I just wanted to help however I could and be a good person in life. She promised to pay me back when she could. Turns out she lied about having cancer, was stealing from the company I worked at, scammed my other co-workers, and would come in after calling out of work for her chemo to make fraudulent returns while I was overseeing the store by myself because of her calling out. Got that B fired and got promoted to her position after. We were asleep one night with window open. We wake up, BC, there is a couple walking down the road arguing. The girl is closer than the guy. Next thing we know, the girl is banging on door begging to come in. We call police. They get there and couple gone. They tell us that's a common ruse being used in area to get you to open door so they can rob you. This is scary. Somebody put one of those free items sites on Facebook that she needed an outdoor playscape thing for her kids who were going crazy during quarantine. My kids are now older, but we had this cool plastic little Tykes fort that was in great shape. Those things are beasts. It had a slide and a little play area. Perfect for the age her kids were. I drive a pickup, so even offered to deliver it. She went full choosing buggers on me and said she was looking for a more elaborate one with more things to do. Like the giant wooden ones. Good luck, lady. I'm done with you all. Had a new manager come into my former place of employment. Immediately this new manager starts firing people for bullshit reasons and hiring people from her old job to replace them. The walls in that place talked, and few noticed the janitor, so when I heard rumors of the next heads on the chopping block, one of which was mine, I decided to be nice and help out the other two. I considered them good friends, and it was the least I could do, right? I warn one, and he takes it seriously and begins looking for another job, so when the pink slip arrived, he landed on his feet running. The other promptly goes squealing to the manager in question, who uses that as an excuse to fire me, and then fires the person that had squealed. All 3 jobs were quickly filled by her old friends from her previous job. I've refused to lift a finger to help a co-worker out since. I've had advanced warnings of firing and disciplinary hearings, and various other juicy gossip people for some reason think I hear with my eyes and assume that they can talk in front of me and I won't notice. I'm going blind. People, not deaf, but I've kept it all to myself. Fuck 'em. When someone just spat some gum on my hand when I tried to help them up, and to this day screw them. Edit. How did I get these upvotes? Why do I have these upvotes? What is life now? Was it intentional like a frick you? If so, did you immediately slap their face? When I was 17 I got my driver's license and suddenly everyone needed a ride. No one ever wanted to offer to pitch in or anything. Then one day I got volunteered without even asking me and I was like F this, and the next vehicle I got was a tiny truck with barely any room. No one asked for more rides. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.